What are the pros and what are the cons of expatriating from your home country? In this video, I'm going to talk to US citizens who are considering going overseas, renouncing their citizenship, and I want to clear up some of the benefits and some of the downsides so that you can make an informed decision. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. There are a lot of myths that surround expatriation. You can watch my video and find out all of the myths about renouncing US citizenship, things people get wrong. This is not something that you do because you want to evade criminal prosecution or because you want to get out of a tax bill you've already incurred. But what it is a way to distance yourself from your home country, in this case the United States. I'm going to start by talking about the benefits that people get, or the perceived benefits people get. The first thing, and the reason that the media always quotes that people leave the United States and give up their passport, is the tax benefits. So that may or may not be a benefit for you, but for 6 and 7 and 8 figure earners, what you're going to find is that you no longer have to file a U.S. tax return. You no longer have to file reports of your U.S. bank accounts or Form 5471 for your foreign companies. You no longer have to report any of the income that you're earning, unless that's U.S. source income, unless you have stuff that's actually happening within the U.S. So everything that you're doing overseas, you no longer report to the United States. And you no longer pay tax on that. You're no longer paying tax on your worldwide income. So from the date of expatriation, you become an alien. You're no longer required to file and pay as a U.S. citizen would. And what that means is reduced compliance. It also means that you're going to avoid the new provisions under some of the new tax laws where, you can't live overseas and retain earnings indefinitely. You have to pay something. What U.S. citizens are finding now is you're going to be paying something no matter where you live. Whether you've got a high-level job, whether you've got a business, there is no more free lunch. The other thing that you will clear up is a gap in different tax systems. U.S. and Canadian citizens often have this if they're dual citizens because they live in Canada and there are certain tax provisions in Canada that don't match up with the provisions in the United States. Now, someone who goes to live in Canada is not exactly someone who's avoiding tax. They're paying plenty of tax in Canada, but what happens is Canada will have a tax on one thing and the U.S. won't have it on another thing, and then vice versa. And so you won't be able to take advantage of foreign tax credits to offset certain taxes because that tax won't apply in the United States. I'll give you an example of someone I know. We did an interview with Jack Sinclair, who's a poker player. He lives in London. And in the UK, you can make money playing poker and gambling, and that money is not subject to tax. But if he happened to be a US citizen, then there would be no relief for him. He would just pay in the entire amount because the US is a different system than the UK. So what happens is, even if you live in a high tax country, you may have some taxes on income that you can't basically offset. And so that is something that expatriation would prevent. Even if you're living in a high tax country, you would clear that issue up. More importantly to some is no exposure to future tax. We talked in another video about how one person who came to me said, this system is like a psycho girlfriend where you never know what's going to happen next. You never know if they're going to go back 30 years and say, we want some money from you for that. This kind of after the fact taxation. By getting out, you can generally, and who knows what they do in the future, but you can generally say, okay, fine, this is it. Whatever you do after that, I'm out. One thing in terms of future tax that you can prevent in many cases is if you have an estate tax issue. Now, this is a rather complicated issue. I'm not going to get into it here on YouTube, and I'm not an estate tax expert in general, but if you are to expatriate, that can make your estate tax planning more straightforward. One of the things that people are also confused about is they think that, they've got to pack everything up and to leave and to get all their money outside of the United States. What a lot of people who expatriate from the United States have is investments that stay in the United States. They may have rental properties, they may have stocks, they may have different investments, and you're still going to pay tax on those. And again, it's a complicated situation depending on what those assets are. But you can still bank in the United States. You can still keep money there. In fact, the interest you earn on that money is tax-free. And so a lot of people think that they've got to clear everything out. That's actually a benefit, that the United States is a place to bank. It's not the worst place in the world, certainly not the best, but it's not the worst. And so if you're used to banking with a certain bank, you can actually keep that relationship. On top of that, what some people tell me is that they actually feel better using a different passport. They actually feel better traveling as a citizen of a different country, or they just feel more free walking into a bank and saying, no, I don't need to fill out that form because that doesn't apply to me. FATCA no longer applies to me. And so people feel lighter, they feel freer. Perhaps they like the idea of not having to feel patriotic to a place they didn't feel that they belonged. So those are the benefits. What are the downsides? I think that the biggest downside that applies to a lot of people is you no longer have access to the U.S. job market. I mean, as countries really tighten up their immigration procedures, there are a lot of countries opening up immigration procedures, but a lot of developed countries are tightening up. It's going to be very hard to get a job, if not impossible, in the United States if you're not a U.S. citizen. And so if you give up that citizenship, you're giving up easy access to people to work in the United States. So if you're like one friend of mine who just has a really high-paying job and he lives overseas, you've got to think long and hard about, will I always be able to get a high-paying job overseas? You know, how long am I going to be able to take this? Can I save enough money that if something happens, I can start my business, or I can retire, or I'll be okay? So when someone comes to me and says, Andrew, I've got all my money in Bitcoin or in some kind of cryptocurrency, and I want to expatriate because they're making it really hard on crypto investors, I'm totally understanding of that. But what I want that crypto investor to understand is that if for some reason their cryptocurrency goes to zero with a bullet and they've got to go finding a job, they're probably going to have a lot fewer job opportunities in Dominica or in Armenia than they are going to in the United States. And so you have to be prepared for that. That's the number one thing that I think a lot of people don't think through, is because we're so used to the idea that, oh, I just go out and get a job. Well, you may not be able to do that. If you don't have a Canadian or a visa waiver program passport, you're going to need a visa. So you may not even be able to visit. You may not even be able to come back, let alone get a job, not even come back. I'm not suggesting that there's a campaign against people who have renounced. I'm saying that if you don't have all the requisite things to show that you should get a visa, you may not. And so those are the things that you really have to understand. Is your family going to visit you in another country? How are you going to spend time with friends, with family? How are you going to handle a job if that's what you need to do? More minor provisions are you can't vote in elections. You can't get access to consular protection if you get hurt, if you get beaten up, if your wallet gets stolen, whatever the case may be. You can't get emergency evacuation if you're in a war zone. My answer to that is don't go to a war zone. But I think that those benefits are probably a lot smaller. People think that the U.S. embassy is going to save them from all dumb things they can do. And the reality is that's not how it works. Even if you get sent to jail in a foreign country, they say, hey, here's a list of lawyers. By the way, we haven't vetted them. So I'm not convinced that that's really the reason to do it. For me, if you are a high-level entrepreneur, you're confident in the direction that you're going, or you're a high-level investor, then there may be some benefits to consider. If you're someone who is newly in business or who hasn't saved up a lot of money, or you're in some kind of volatile investment like cryptocurrency, it may not make as much sense because you won't have that cushion to fall back on. And if all of your money is being made from U.S. source investments, or if a lot of your money is being made from U.S. source investments like U.S. stocks, U.S. properties, you may actually find yourself in a worse tax situation. So this is really something for someone who's decided, I don't need to rely on the United States for my money anymore. I can do it on my own. I'm not investing there. I'm not doing work there. That's the kind of person who should consider making this decision. And so I think that it's really important to clarify that stuff for you, because a lot of people go into this starry-eyed. They go into it emotional. They go into it saying, I'm a libertarian. I'm going to show these guys I'm not paying for their wars. I don't want anyone to jump into this without fully understanding, yes, here are the stuff that I'm getting, this stuff is good, but also understanding what you may be giving up.
I'm Andrew Henderson, and if you're looking for a way to legally reduce your taxes, build your freedom, and create wealth faster as a global citizen, then you've come to the right place. I want you to do 3 things right now. Number 1, click the button to subscribe to our channel. Make sure to get notifications so you never miss a new video. Number 2, get a copy of our #1 best-selling book, Nomad Capitalist, on Amazon, and learn all the dozens of benefits of our lifestyle. And number 3, if you're already a 6 or 7-figure entrepreneur and you want to put these strategies in place, go to nomadcapitalist.com and find out how to get some help.